Hi, and welcome to another video for Aperture Speaks. Today we're going to be adding borders and using acid. Of course, that sounds a lot more interesting than it probably is, but there we are. I wrote a blog post last Thursday about adding borders to images, and one person commented that they like the idea of adding borders, but they don't know how to do it. So this is sort of for you, EB, MB. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to say your name. But you know who you are, and what I decided was that I would make a video adding some borders to an image, but also I'll be messing around a little bit using an action called Urban Acid that I took from the internet. So, as the action sort of says, it's called Urban Acid, so I wanted an urban image really to play around with. It's an image from last year, which I created when I was photographing an old abandoned tenement house, and I thought that this would work really, really well with the sort of feel which I'm going to go for. So I took this into HDR because I really wanted just to create a really contrasted image, getting a lot of the details out of the brickwork, out of the plaster. As you can see from this image, when it decides it's going to load up, is that you have a lot of defects in that stonework there, but if you look into the background, that's actually plaster, which has been chipped away, been painted, and then you got the brick underneath. You've got an old wooden door frame, some graffiti, and for me, it all looks quite nice in a sort of like urban image type way. So I really just wanted to highlight all of that, like bring all of that out before I go into it. The final image will be very contrasted. So I'm just boosting the contrast from the beginning. So I went into the HFX and I did all that, and then I brought the image into Photoshop. And so when in Photoshop, I straightened the image because your images have got to be straight. Even when you're having fun and you're messing around with images, a straight image is a good image. So use the ruler tool and then rotate arbitrary. I think there's also a slight perspective shift as well, but I'm not really going to worry about that bit too much. So I don't really care. Straight lines, perspective, always one of my big things, but when I'm doing this, not really too much. I crop the image, but it's only just for my workflow that I prefer to have a cropped image so I can see actually what I'm dealing with, instead of having an image askew and then I'm not sure what is straight and what isn't. So I duplicate the layer into a new window, and I imported the action into my actions palette. And so this is called Urban Acid. So we just play it. I didn't know at the time it was actually going to duplicate into a new window again, but it's just one of my sort of safety things that I automatically duplicate into a new window. So the action did it. I should have read through the action a little bit and realized. So that's what I'm just doing now, is just getting back to my original. So rename layers. Always should name your layers when you know where you are. And really, it seems like there's a curves adjustment layer with curves on all three channels, and then there's a layer over the top. And it just gives you this contrasted cyan shift. Everything is shifted towards cyan, which looks quite nice. So really what I'm going to do now is just quickly show you this image. And here it is. So this is the image straight after the Urban Acid. It looks quite a bit like a bleach bypass, which has got a cyan coloring to it, or it's a cyan bias. I like it actually. That looks like quite a nice image just to begin with, before I'm going to go any further with it. Obviously, that white bit, which has been painted with the numbers, it actually has I think that's actually due partly with the address, or from the look of it, I'm not 100% sure. It has Gorna, which I know is the district of the city. So there we are. And that white bit's really sort of blown out right in the center there. Going back out, you can still make out all that little contrasted details. What I mean by contrast details is the black pit holes is contrasting quite nicely against the stonework there. And the background, it looks really messed up. You can't really even sort of see the difference in that plant and anything. So the next part is actually the adding of the border. So this is where we begin adding borders to the image. I actually opened 3 borders for this particular workflow, but what I'm going to tell you probably in the next couple of minutes for the first bit is all you need to know about adding borders to an image. So I got a color, a Polaroid, and this textured one. What I'm going to do is actually have a textured, and then the Polaroid, and then the color, and have like a color overlay. That's what I'm going to do. So in the first part, I take the border and I just make it sure it goes over the top. I then duplicate the layer because I'll need the original later. What happens to this layer now is it will be removed really, because I'm going to select all and then I'm going to cut. So that's Control A and then Control X. What you can then do is go to your channels palette and add a new channel in the alpha channel, and then paste it, Control V, and then Control click on the alpha channel, and it will make a selection of all the highlighted areas. By then adding a new layer, if you fill it in black, everything that was white before, or everything was a highlighted area, is now black. So inverting that basically means that white area in the middle has now become this sort of black area, okay? And the grays just sort of follow through. So what I then do is pull my edit layer, so that urban acid layer, over the top and add a clipping mask. What the clipping mask will do is anything that is black on the layer below, you can see through, okay? So you can see. Anything that's not black, you then see through on a varying opacity depending on what position of gray it is, okay? And that's basically how you add a border normally. Because what it will do is it will allow you to have the sort of fading that a normal border would have out. And so the image looks quite natural when it's put with the border. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm adding more borders on top because that was my texture bit that's my texture part of my bordering for this particular image. But normally, that's where you'll probably finish. Okay. So in this particular one, I'm now adding a Polaroid border. I'm going to do something similar, but just to keep in the details of the side parts of this border. It could be seen as a little bit unnecessary, but it's something which I like to have added to the image, especially when you're adding so many borders one on top of the other. So this one I have to desaturate, and it actually has a, if you don't notice, it actually has clear in the middle, and that's so I have to actually make the white bit in the center for this to work. So I just drop that in there, and nice bit of Control E, and desaturate. You desaturate so you can have, it selects the highlights clearly. Use the alpha channel again, paste, Control, click. And then once again, use the paint bucket. And there it is. This time I'm actually selecting the highlights because I'm not inverting it. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm actually going to drop it below all the layers so that it will show this black border, because I'm going to put the original layer as an overlay. And the reason for that is so I get this sort of contrasted area on the side. So just dropping everything in, it actually does end up looking quite nice. You get this sort of ripped effect on the side there. You get this sort of highlighted on the left, this sort of contrasted highlight into yellow. Next part is just adding in my color overlay. So once again, this is another border. I'm dropping it below the Polaroid border. And then just gonna go color. Oh, first of all, I'm gonna name all my layers. Naming layers is something you should do as you go along. I generally do it in varying stages of my image. Naming layers is quite important, so you know where you are if you ever go back and look at the image later. Especially when you've got so many layers like this, so you have like clipping masks and things like that. Photoshop does have a better layer system than it used to, and you can actually, if you've got like 100 layers in an image, you can actually search for it. So what I did is with the color layer, I just put it as a blending mode, and put blending mode color, and then just lower the opacity just to make sure it didn't wash everything out. The next part I'm going to do is actually using some brushes, and this is going to be on a layer mask of my actual photographic layer. And this is just so I can destroy the edges of the image a little bit. I'm using grunge brushes. I've got a few grunge packs of brushes, and really it's just dirt. It's just sort of adding. And what I do is I use one brush, and then like enlarge, make it big, and then use the rotate function to rotate the brush. Just organizing my brush there. And just rotate the brush so that it does actually it doesn't actually look like it's just one brush being used over and over again. So you just use one brush going around, rotating, enlarging it, making it smaller, decreasing its size, and just going around. And then once you've used it a few times, then just go around and actually switch backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And because I got black underneath, that's my layer underneath, what it is doing is really darkening and really bringing that dark. But it also, because I've got this layer on a clipping mask, when I put a layer mask on the layer, we see through below the layer, we see through that layer below to the layer below that. And that's why you're getting that sort of black. And you're not just getting the texture. So I'm just double checking everything. I'm just adding in now a new layer filled and just burning, dodging in the center. So really pushing the highlights there. And then I'm going to burn in around the edges. And that's just to some final finishing touches to the image. And it's, it's a low opacity brush, so you just go around and it really boosts that sort of center and darkens the edges. And there we go. That's pretty much it. Here's the final image. So that's how you add a border, but also that's how you do a few other interesting things you can do with borders, because you can sort of layer them on top of each other just to bring out the different things. For me, this image, it looks nice. It's not an image I would probably have like on my wall, but it is a nice image just to show off a few bit of skills about editing. The masking looks really quite nice on the borders. The colors look really intense, and it does look like this is a photograph which has been through some abuse in its life. Not treated very well. Maybe like shoved in somewhere with light leaking all over it. Maybe there's a problem with the camera. That's the other sort of thing they're just sort of faking here. So there's other different possibilities which I really like about this image. So once again, I'll put in the blog post the instructions on how to do it, just in case you couldn't quite follow it on the video. So please just pop as a link for my blog. And the blog address is aperture64.wordpress.com. I post daily, sometimes twice a day. I also have a Twitter feed, which I'm really, really happy about, and I can send messages here, there, and everywhere. And there's my Facebook page, which really picks up both the blog and the Twitter. So if you're not a Twitter follower, you can just like the Facebook page, and you'll get everything, hopefully, in your newsfeed, as long as you put like and follow together. And that's really the end of the video. Hope you have a great week, and I'll be back next Tuesday. Until then, bye-bye.